Hello, everyone, and welcome back. We just got through playing Marvel Legendary, the deck building game, and Sentinels of the Multiverse. And we're here. We're going to be chatting a little bit about the various Marvel games that we've played over the years, and the chat's already lighting up. Unbeknownst to me, I've seen some of these. Like Thanos Rising was a pretty recent board game, came out from USAopoly in 2018. But there have been a handful of board games coming out more recently, and those are probably more modern games. But we were particularly interested in looking at the kind of semi or completely cooperative card game base. That's why we played Sentinels and Legendary particularly. But there have been a ton of Marvel games, even some other active ones right now. There's Dice Masters, which is still around, and Heroclix, which is still around. I'm not sure.
Crisis Protocol is on the way, right?
A new Marvel miniatures game. And I'm not sure if Heroclix, I know Heroclix around. There's a game I lost. Oh, Versus. I'm not sure if Versus is still active.
I'm pretty certain.
The two-player card game for 3 to 4 players. My favorite of all of them. So if you're familiar with any of these, it'll be helpful because we'll use them as kind of reference points, and we'll give a quick rundown of the various games so far.
The basic point of this video, too, is like we'll probably retitle it because actually talking about Marvel board games is a pretty vast audience. But when we were thinking about Marvel Champions and we were looking at its entry into the marketplace, it's going to be a direct competitor to a number of these kind of cooperative titles. I think players are going to have to make a choice between continuing to pick up Legendary or switching over to Marvel Champions, or maybe I'm a Marvel fan, I've been a big fan of the movies, and now I'm getting into tabletop games and I want to have a cooperative experience with my friends. What am I going to choose? And I think, you're going to see Marvel Champions, the LCG, you're going to see people mention Legendary, you're going to see people talk maybe about Sentinels, and you're certainly going to see things like Heroclix, like you said. And so when you think about all of these different opportunities that you have as a person in the tabletop gaming space to kind of find the one that fits you best, we're trying to give a little guidance on what that might be. And if you're a board gamer and you want to buy a nice board game that's Marvel themed and do that, that's kind of a separate thing. Zach and I don't play enough board games to really help you out with that. There are plenty of good channels that do. I'm sure you can find a lot of reviews for all those various games.
But we do play a lot of card games.
We do play a lot of card games. We play a weird niche genre of games. Expandable, sometimes miniatures, most of the time cards, usually deck construction or some kind of constructive element is involved. A lot of community involvement is typically involved.
It's usually the games that you play. And by play, I mean you like all the games you play.
Thanks.
No, but it's the kind of game that you have maybe one of these upgrade slots on your character as a person.
We want to talk about lifestyle. I don't know if that's the right word for it, but it's kind of you dedicate yourself.
I think it's if I were really putting weirder, more specific words to this,
Please.
Is the kind of games that you spend as much time talking or thinking about away from the game as you do when you're in it. And I know even with something, I think it's a much simpler entry point games like Catan. When I first started playing that, the people I was playing it with, we talked about quite a bit. But it was really mainly right after we played. It wasn't like we were texting about it at 2 in the morning.
Right.
So
if
you have
just
a game,
had 3 sheep, maybe I should build a tower next game.
And but now it's if there's a game that you're texting about or emailing or chatting about or on a Discord server or on a forum about at 2 in the morning, this is probably a sign that you're into that kind of game.
Okay, fair enough.
And the other part is heavier on the community component, which is the kind of games that you show up and there's going to be a lot of different people playing it, and you kind of that kind of a thing.
So let's run them down. So Legendary. So here's the thing: we just played essentially the opening scenario of the Legendary deck builder.
Yep.
And this game has a lot of expansions, got a lot of content, it's got a lot of different modes of play that have been introduced over the years. So there's a lot out there for Legendary. And I think at the very bare bones, if you know what a deck builder is and you love deck building games, then it's a great choice. I mean, for a Marvel-themed game, if deck building is your thing, and by deck building I mean the kind of game that emulates a good mini games, really. Like you said, the RTSs, it reminds you of a StarCraft or Warcraft.
Kind of building an engine.
You start with this tiny little meager card pool, and then you buy cards from a central board to make your deck over time get better and better and better. So by the end of it, you feel like you're super powerful and you've achieved your synergies, and then you go and get stuff and attack villains and win the game and try to get more victory points than your friends. If that's what you like and you're into that, it's a great game. If you don't know what a deck builder is, I would actually say that Legendary is a pretty cool little intro game to not just board games, but also the deck building genre, especially if your group loves Marvel, loves heroes. It's a great thing to introduce a number of people to this hobby with.
Sure.
I think it's pretty easy to understand. You come in, your first game will be a little rough, and then by your second one, people start to understand. And then I think it's the kind of thing where it's going to, can we play again? Can we play again? Can we play again?
Once you kind of get used to it. Well, and I think Legendary is a super, there's a ton of content there. And that's what, if you are into tabletop games and you like deck builders and you like Marvel, I would be shocked if you haven't already checked out Legendary.
Yeah. If you haven't, please go do that right now.
Yeah. If you're
worthwhile.
just now getting into tabletop, or if Champions is kind of making you take a look at some of these games, that's where I think that's a great thing to just buy the core set or whatever the starter's called, and see if you even like deck builders in the first place. And there's a ton of content out there for that game. Like, I mean, you have years ahead of you of being able to buy an expansion and kind of change that up.
So then I think the next comparison that's really relevant, I mean, so I don't think there's going to be a lot of people choosing between Sentinels and Marvel Champions. So these two games are very similar in the way that a system is being built to run. You have a villain out that you're fighting. That villain is in a certain environment or scenario that is informing additional kind of variables that are going to challenge you and change up the game. And then you're going to reveal random cards from those decks. They're going to do random things that make your life harder. And you come to the champion. When you're the hero, you take your turn and you try to recover and kind of do damage back to the villain. And you're going to do that back and forth until one of those teams wins. Either the villains are going to win against the heroes or the heroes are going to win against the villains. The thing about it is that Sentinels is completed, right? It is.
They're done making new expansions.
It's done. So, like, at this point, really, for one, rather than buying all of the Sentinel stuff, if you're just getting started, just start fresh with Marvel Champions and be a part of like an active community that is going to keep growing and going to keep giving you new content over time. That's first of all a great thing to consider. Second, the Champions rule set and engine is really just like 3 to 4 iterations past Sentinels in
That's
its
definitely
development.
the feeling I got. So we just did kind of like a partial game, and it was very clunky, and when I remember playing it when it came out and thinking like, oh, this is great.
It's pretty good.
And you know, times change and times evolve, and you get used to certain things in games. But it's definitely a lot denser and clunkier, and like that is something people are into. So if that is your thing, Sentinels is there. There's also apparently an app that people love about Sentinels that manages all that stuff for you. So that's also, if you play a lot of solo mode or a single player, that might be a game worth checking out. It's not Marvel, it's just kind of generic hero.
Which could also be a draw for a lot of folks.
I
So, like,
totally agree with that.
The total indie universe, it's not heroes that you know, it's totally original concepts. That provides a lot of value for some folks as well if you're just looking to kind of see a truly like self-contained and uniquely created universe that you haven't been beat over the head with since you were 3 years old about Spider-Man and Captain America and Iron Man. Then it's a good shot there, but really be warned, it's not a smooth game, and it shows. I mean, it's made a long time ago. It's in these early concepts. I have to imagine that many of the people who are involved in Champions probably have played Sentinels in the Multiverse.
Sure.
You know, these kinds of games get passed around all of the different circles. So it took some inspiration from that probably, and Champions in every way is a better experience, aside, I think, from the theme element of it. If you really like the indie heroes and stuff, Sentinels probably has some draw, but it's retired, and it's not nearly as good of an engine. So I would just go right into Champions.
Well, and I think you're totally right in saying that Champions feels like a 3 or 4 iterations later.
Didn't you call it Alexis or something?
So I was saying, like, it's funny because like we've been playing Arkham, right? And you've been playing more than me, but we've been playing Arkham, and then Champions came out. And the initial thought was that, like, because Arkham came out after Lord of the Rings on the LCG cooperative scale, and Arkham felt like, oh my goodness, they have taken all these great things that I loved about Lord of the Rings and somehow done it even better in Arkham, which is they went from like 3 characters to 1, so you feel like you're playing a character. The location and the storytelling was way stronger, and then they had the negative cards, they're not obligations, I mean heroes.
Yeah, the weaknesses.
The weaknesses, and it was like, man, this is great, and like they're capturing this theme incredibly well. So then Champions gets announced, and it's like, well, this has got to just be the next, like, what's beyond Arkham? Like, oh my goodness, let's see it. And then we play it, and like the way we described it, right, was if you're familiar with all these games, it's like, oh, this actually feels like a much more refined Lord of the Rings, which is, we thought that was Arkham, but it was like, wait a second, no. Champions is actually the next iteration, like, because you go to one character, so you're playing a single hero, but it feels a lot mechanically more like Lord of the Rings, whereas Arkham feels a lot more like a storytelling RPG. This there is a story going on, but it's a lot less intense. So that's where, like compared to Sentinels, if you loved that game, this is a natural next stop.
If you love Sentinels, you must be playing Marvel Champions.
It's going to be killer for you.
I don't think there's even a choice.
Yeah, but
There's always a choice.
There is a choice. What I'm
You must.
expecting out of Champions, because it's an LCG and because of the way Fantasy Flight Games works, and just from everything they've even been talking about and showing, I get the feeling that there is going to be a much stronger community component to Champions.
A lot more online activity, a lot more in-store presence,
yes,
a lot more conversations.
The way
about
they
game.
structured it, right? Because Arkham has done incredibly well for cooperative LCG, super like great game, big community, etc.
I mean, it just continues to. It doesn't seem like it's losing steam. I think is the fascinating thing about Arkham. It continues to pick up new players, and it's one of those games that doesn't feel like it's fading.
Sure.
You know, it's been out for a long time, but everyone's still as excited about it.
And the LCG format is particularly suited for cooperative for that reason. We talk about this a lot on the podcast. But, effectively with Arkham, right, you can buy a core set right now and start playing. You don't need to buy everything. And then basically you have all these stories that are, it's kind of like Legendaries now. You have all this content out there waiting for you that you don't have to buy up front, right? It doesn't start. But in comparison to, one of the things that Legendary and Sentinels is not doing that Champions allows is deck building. So that's what I was saying is like, I like deck building. I enjoy the process of building an engine, right? But essentially, you come to a game of Champions with an engine built. Yeah. And that's what we're talking about Legendary. Part of the game is building the engine.
On the fly.
Which
makes it lighter and faster to approach up front.
100%. No legwork up front, but it does require that legwork during the game. So it makes it feel like, what I normally consider the game is only a small part of the game, because it's only like half is when your deck's actually kind of doing what it does.
So Champions, you start playing, and then with Legendary, you kind of start playing after you've built your deck in the first half of the game through drafting
100%.
Cards and whatnot,
and then
which is fun for many folks.
Sentinels,
I like it quite a bit.
Sentinels is pre-constructed, can't change, can't alter style decks, right? So I think what Champions is really, among all sorts of things, getting right in comparison to both those games is that they're selling the packs, which is a whole deck. Like the Captain America deck is coming out, and the Miss Marvel. And you're even saying, you mentioned earlier the theme of Sentinels being different. And I think one thing they're doing with Champions is pretty cool. They're not just using the A-team. Like the mega movie, you've heard of the mainline superheroes. Miss Marvel, you got She-Hulk in the core set, right? And I assume they're going to keep balancing where it's like, Captain America and Miss Marvel, who's popular, popular in the comics, but also not like random person on the street's just going to know who this character is, right? But the customization element to me is that's what makes it something you talk about. Like,
you have to
morning,
bounce some ideas. Yeah, it's like, what do you think? Would this card work well with Captain Marvel?
Well, and you can sit at home and deck build. You can look at cards online. You can think it. You can be spoiled, right? But like, if they preview a new expansion for Legendary, it's like, yeah, that's cool. I want to mix it in with my stuff, but like, I'm just kind of waiting until it comes out to like really dive in.
What do you think about, you play Dice Masters?
Yeah.
What do you think about that game in this conversation?
So
is it totally different because it's one-on-one? It is one-on-one, yeah?
Yeah, it's one-on-one. It's heads up ball play. So it's one-on-one, and it reminded me of like a earlier iteration of Star Wars Destiny. So there are cards that kind of tell you what the dice do, but like it's basically a dice game. There's dice involved. It's fast, it's fun, it's quick, it's easy.
Pretty abstract?
Pretty abstract, yeah.
Yeah.
But the Dice Masters and Heroclix to me are very similar in that they're pretty fast, pretty easy. They're fun, right?
I thought Heroclix was a little thick. I thought it was a little complex when I played it last. I mean, the idea of it isn't thick, but you have to know all the different abilities on all these different heroes. A classic miniatures game.
I felt like comparing it to a freeform miniatures game where there's like a 200-page rule book and measuring and all that stuff.
It's quicker than that.
It felt quick, but I feel like they both suffer from the same thing, which is this is what competitive games struggle with, right? Which is balance. And those games it's the complaint I see all the time in the various groups I'm in for these games, which is like, this is out of balance, this is broken, this is dominating, everyone's playing this kind of a thing. And it's one of the things that the co-ops don't, one of the best parts of co-ops is that they don't have to balance as much, right? It's just like, make Captain America feel like Captain America. If it's unbalanced, fine.
And you can introduce some cards later, or it's not... The problem in competitive games, when a balance differential is large, one player who's playing something that is not awesome is going to feel horrible the entire game. Like, even if my deck is less efficient or less effective than yours in a game like Champions, I'm still contributing something, and I'm not just getting buried every turn after turn after turn with no hope. So, like, even if I'm contributing very little, I'm still contributing.
Sure.
And in the grand scheme of the game, yeah, maybe I'm like weighing the group down, but you're still having an experience where you're contributing to the ultimate end goal of the team. And so, like any great cooperative experience, you're a part of the winning. And even if somebody's doing a lot of the work, when you win, you all win together. And so it feels like you were a part of that.
Sure.
Right?
Well, and I think the thing that Champions gets extremely right as well is that the way you interact together, like Legendary and Sentinels both very much felt kind of siloed. Which happens. Like Lord of the Rings had this problem as well. The one player is murdering all the enemies, and the other player is defending all the attacks, and then the other player is questing and basically removing all the threat. In this game, right, that's where it's hard for me to imagine it. Maybe there's enough cards that'll come out eventually that makes it possible to build a deck like this.
Like min-max super hard?
Well, like I'm trying to picture someone not being capable of contributing a decent amount. No matter, it doesn't. You get your hand, you're going to play some cards. It really doesn't matter what you do. You're going to be a part of this team, and your actions directly affect how the game's going to go. Are you in hero alter ego mode affects what's going to happen, right? So I think in that way they have found a way to basically streamline the entire process, even with the way they're packaging the packs with the hero stuff, but also give you the option for deck building and nuance and whatnot. And they also make it so that the play is more interlaced.
That's something that I think is really important. Given our fairly minimal experience with Legendary and Sentinels, there wasn't that, being able to request an action from the other player is really relevant in Champions feeling so significant. If it didn't have that, I actually think it would lose a lot. But, like, we feel like we're actually a team. Yeah. Rather than, like... Because Legendary is not really meant to feel like that, because we're technically competing. We're trying to get the most victory points at the end and also beat the stage, of course. So we kind of are like, this is best for me, this is best for me, this is best for me, that's best for you, that's best for you, that's best for you. And we move it on. But with Champions, there's such a feeling of teamwork during that game that it does kind of separate it from the pack.
And I think part of that is the fact that you can take actions, like you were saying, but also, like, you need to be on the same page about what your goals are this turn. Yeah. Right? It's like, we need to avoid threat at all costs, so if you can, stay in hero mode, right? Or, like, we need to remove this, like, can someone remove 4 threat this round? It's like, I got it. Like, I can do some damage, and I can do some of this. And even just looking at your hand and realizing, we had that one of those last games we played, which was like, do I need to draw the card off my ability, or can I give that to someone else? Because it's like, if I'm not going to use it, it's way better for me. I remember I gave you like 2 or 3 cards one turn. Yeah. And it's like, because I just didn't need them. And it let us do, and it's like, I felt like I helped do the thing that you just did, but I didn't directly do it. Yeah.
So long story short, I mean, Legendary is exactly what you'd expect if you're looking for a Marvel deck building game. I think it's a great game. It has a good community behind it, and there's a lot of people that love Legendary for good reason. It has long legs on it. It's got a lot of expansions out, and it's not really as robust of a cooperative experience. At least when we played, we didn't feel like we were like working towards this mutual goal, and it was really pumping us up.
Yeah.
Because there was always that element of like, there's just kind of an efficient way that I should get my cards, and hopefully it works out in the end. Of course, we lost, and we were playing it wrong. And then you have Sentinels, which I think if you're making a decision right now to buy into something, do not buy Sentinels if you have the desire to buy Champions as well. Like if you're comparing the two, I think you're going to get a much better experience out of Champions. Unless you're just really in love with this indie universe, Sentinels universe that has been created. And if you love those heroes and if you love that theme, then Sentinels is the only way you're going to get that. So that's a good consideration. But if you look at just things like card quality, quality of the system itself, the engine, quality of the art, all of the components, like everything about Champions is going to be more upgraded, more modern, just smoother, more, I don't want to use the word elegant because it gets used way too often, but that's a good word that you could use as well. And it feels like if you already play Sentinels and you like Sentinels a lot, it's very obvious that Marvel Champions is the next move for you. If anyone walked in our store right now and said, I really love Sentinels, what do you think I should buy next? It'd be like, just stop what you're doing right now and get a demo of Champions.
Yeah.
You got to play this game. And then you have Dice Masters and Clicks, which are on a bit of a different level. We also have Crisis Protocol coming out soon. So these are our Marvel head-to-head games. Heroclix, you're going to be using miniatures to move around a map and attack each other. Crisis Protocol, you're going to be using miniatures to move around a map and attack each other and focus on objectives. And then Dice Masters is kind of just a roll for attack and all of those. Crisis Protocol is going to have a very heavy theme feel because you are literally in that universe with these figures. Heroclix a little bit less so because they're pre-painted. The sculpts are not as good. The game functions a little bit quicker. And then you move back to Dice Masters, and it's a very abstract feeling.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of feeling like there's this big epic battle that's going on.
I think a big component of this for me is the kind of community you're looking to be a part of. Because I picture Crisis Protocol, it is inherently going to be a hobby, right? You assemble models, you paint. I think that's going to be the driving force of that game, where it's like if you're looking for a game to hang out and play and make beautiful models and sometimes play, but really to hang out and model, right? Mm-hmm. Versus Heroclix, if you just want to play, you don't want to do the modeling, you want tournaments, you want that kind of thing. But that's where, to me, with Champions, I don't get a sense that there's a robust Sentinels community out there waiting to play with.
Probably was, early on, but once the game kind of packs up.
Well, and I think this is the distinction I kind of want to make is I feel like Legendary and Sentinels, but particularly Legendary, are very much board games that you have on your shelf, and when people come over, it's a contained thing that you can do.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier to teach, right? Particularly Legendary, that's why I said that. It's way simpler, easier to teach, get people in, we're slinging cards around, we're having fun. Whereas Champions to me is if you're looking for a community to be a part of, and it's designed to be this way. That's why I like it
Living,
as compared to
right? Living card game.
As compared to Lord of the Rings or Arkham, right? Even which are LCGs, but the way it's set up with the scenarios and the way it's set up where you bring your own deck, you can literally just hop in, right, with other people to play this game, and I think that's really important. And there's going to be a lot of people playing this game when it comes out.
We would be remiss to not at least mention Versus.
Yep.
Versus is a heads up 1-versus-1 card game as well. I think in terms of comparing it to Champions, it's really just about, do you want a competitive card game or do you want a cooperative card game? And we could talk about why you might want one or the other. It's fairly straightforward, but at least Zach and I, and maybe this is a function of us getting older, consistently find the cooperative experience is more of a go-to.
Sure.
We're looking for more of a relaxation, more of a kind of friendship, getting together and not having a pressure of competing. So the cooperative games are kind of getting more and more play from us. But if you're looking for a competitive superhero card game, Versus looks really good. I remember it's been so long since I played that game. Have you played it recently?
I haven't played it recently. I have a starter on my desk right now.
Maybe we should play it and see what we think. We could do a separate video on that maybe next week or something.
I'm
it's just so different.
Well,
it's kind of like...
I think it suffers from a lot of the same problems you see with Legendary or Sentinels, which is it was originally made a long time ago.
Sure.
And that's where, if there were a modern Marvel LCG, CCG, however you want to package it, CG, that was competitive, or not even competitive, just one-on-one, I would definitely be interested in playing it. But I've played versus, right? And it was like, this is a little too chunky for me, a little too...
It's been, how long has that been going? Do you have any idea?
Since 2008?
Versus has been in the background of this industry for an extremely long time. And they've released all sorts of different systems in it, right? Isn't that the Versus system? So there's different themes and things that happen. Chat probably knows, you guys probably know more about this than...
Oh no, the game was discontinued in 2009.
But then it came back.
Yeah.
That's the thing. So we probably played an old version of it. We probably played the old 2009 version of it.
Yeah. So that's where it's like, it's just a much older game. And if you're looking for, I mean, you can pick up these things on eBay or whatever, these old sets of these games. But it's also a heads-up game, so it's just way different.
And they released, because wasn't Versus the one that got into trouble with the LCG thing? So there's a new version of it out.
That's the Versus two-player card game. They originally called it a living card game, which is illegal because Fantasy Flight Games has the trademark.
Yeah. So that's something worth checking out. And I think, I mean, the easiest decision to make is, do you want to play a cooperative game or a competitive game? And then you go from there. And it's like, if you want to do a cooperative game, I mean, it's going to be hard to beat right now. Playing Marvel Champions is just the way to do it in the industry right now. Like,
well, and I think you mentioned my Lexus example earlier, which I never actually spoke to.
What does that even mean?
Well, we played these games, right? And we played Champions, and it was like, yeah, it was different than expected because I was kind of expecting the next iteration of Arkham. And the thing that this really brought to the fore for me, playing Sentinels and playing Legendary, because I remember playing these games both when they were like newer and thinking like, oh, this is great, like this is fun, it's heroes, this is great. But they gave me such a higher appreciation for Champions and what Champions has done. And it's pretty, it would have been easy, I think, to come into Champions LCG and try to reinvent the world. And I feel like what they did instead is they pared things back, they brought things down, they decided what was very important and what they were trying to get you to feel, and they have achieved that in spades, right? They want you to feel like the hero you're playing, they want you to have heroic moments, they want you to contribute to a team, and they want you to feel like you're facing off against a villain.
Yeah.
Which, like, it feels like. Legendary, I didn't quite feel like I was fighting the villain.
No,
right?
I didn't feel like that at all.
Not really. And then in, anyway, so like...
Sentinels was hard because we were just trying to keep up with the triggers and the rules.
But I don't feel like that in Champions.
No.
Even the first time I was playing, it was like, oh, it all makes sense and it's working. And that might just be a feature of playing in the FFG system, the way they word cards and the way they work. But at the same time, I have a feeling people were on the chat saying, yes, this is my experience with Sentinels. It was just like too much to handle. So they found a way to be more granular than Legendary without it being burdensome like I feel like Sentinels was. Sentinels was definitely more granular than Legendary to a several power degree.
It was more zoomed in, for sure.
But I feel like Champions is doing that without the complexity, which is an achievement.
Pretty impressive. So that's the kind of a brief rundown of kind of how we're seeing these games in the landscape right now. Now, obviously, if you've been playing Legendary for many years, you know more about Legendary than we do. If you've been playing Sentinels the whole time, or Heroclix, or Versus, all of that, we are not experts at these games at all. Most of them we have played probably 4 or 5 times at max, and sometimes like with Versus a very long time ago. So when we're talking about this, is basically looking at the macro trends in the industry as a whole and saying which of these games is developing in a direction that is the direction that a lot of people might want to go, or that people make this decision need to figure out kind of where they're going to end up. And so just some quick thoughts and some brief kind of getting a little bit of understanding out there, especially for somebody who's brand new, looking for a Marvel game to get into. There's a lot of different options, and hopefully kind of narrowing in some of your choices will be helpful. So just really quickly, to recap, I think the first thing you decide if you want to do cooperative or a competitive game. Depends on your group, it depends on the people you're playing with. Do you have a big community playing a competitive game like Versus and you want to join that? That's relevant. Otherwise, if you have 1 or 2 friends and you guys just want to have a cooperative experience and work together to defeat a villain, then that narrows your choices down quite a bit. I think you then choose between essentially Legendary and Marvel Champions. I don't think Sentinels is really in that conversation at this point. You'll know you'll want Sentinels if you see it and you see the theme and you say, I'm way more into that than Marvel.
I mean, I think, honestly, the thing that I read, right, when people were chatting about it is, if you want a digital game to play that's Heroes, There's a digital version. of
Okay,
it.
that's
And,
a good way for Sentinels to work. Just go
if-
digital with Sentinels.
If it's like you find yourself, maybe you have kids, they go to bed 9 or 10, you have a couple hours where you're just looking for something to do and you love heroes, Sentinels probably is a great pick for that.
Yeah. And then if you go in the competitive space, you've got a couple of options. Do you want miniatures? Do you want cards? Do you want dice? I mean, and it kind of comes down to that. So miniatures game is going to be a little bit heavier, longer, more tactile. Obviously, for Crisis Protocol, you have the hobby element. You're going to have to paint. You're going to have to put things together. If you don't want that, but you still want to play a miniatures game, Heroclix is there, long-standing. Heroclix has been around for thousands of years. It was birthed from the eternal magma. And it is also a collectible game, which means for Heroclix, you're going to be buying a bunch of stuff and hoping you get what you want. And then on the other side of that, you have Versus, which is a card game. And if you're looking for a superhero competitive card game, I think it's about the only one that you probably
I think it's the only one around right now.
It's the only one I've heard of.
Yeah.
And it's a well-known, well-regarded system, so that's a good option for you. And then otherwise, if you want to take a look at Dice Masters, super quick, easier, quicker. And that's actually kind of becoming a long-running title at this point now, too. Dice Masters been around for a little while.
Yeah, they transitioned very much into like a system where they're releasing different IPs on the same, and you can play them together and stuff. So it's definitely, I mean, both Heroclix and that, if you're just casually looking to get in, I think those are fine games. They have really cool Heroclix starters they'll put out, and it's like this team versus this team. So I mean, those are fun little games, but it's definitely not the kind of game that I like ever latched on, right?
Didn't get your teeth sunk?
Some things worth, I guess, questions that are worth answering, maybe. Champions have a release date? I'll let you answer that one while I pull up.
October. That's all
October
we
is all
ever
we know.
get. We don't get anything special, I swear. No retail store in the country gets anything special because I don't think any of these publishers actually know when a game's releasing.
Well, it's on boats and stuff, man, and docs. Right. I wanted to read this. Vilantro says, all the content we've been doing has cemented the core set and subscriptions from us.
Good.
Really appreciate that. Just wanted to shout that out. Everyone pre-ordering the core set from us and signing up for the subscriptions is incredible.
And we're not, the intent of this video, I mean, it's hard. The internet is the internet, and internet culture is internet culture, but we're genuinely trying to be helpful and not just trying to say, like, you should play Marvel Champions, because we're selling it, and that we're not selling any of these other games, so that has an impact. You say, well, these guys are suggesting Champions an awful lot. Is it because they're selling it? We're selling it because we think it's great. And so it's kind of a reversal of the order that you might expect in the shill category.
Yeah, we don't sell Legendary, and I think that's a absolutely worthy game to buy.
Yeah.
if you love deck builders.
But yeah, we're really looking at this honestly and basically trying to get everybody where they need to be in terms of the games that they want to play. So if you're looking for that deck builder experience, you're not going to get that with Marvel Champions. So don't try to force it. I mean, if that's what you want, go for Legendary.
And I think it's someone's pointing out here on the comments, which I think is great. Jim Soder is basically talking about the way they're releasing the packs. And I think that's so important because it's the first LCG legitimately that if you wanted it like Sentinels, it could be, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to customize the decks. You can literally say, hey, Steven, you come over, what's your favorite hero? I have a library of heroes, here's a deck, here it is, we're off to the races. I think they've done a really good job of lowering that barrier on people getting into this game and being able to enjoy it.
Right on. All right, well, what we're going to try to do now is, for the live stream, we're going to try to sneak in a game of Champions. We're going to have about 45 minutes, so we're going to see how fast we can do it. Thanks so very much for watching. It's been fun to explore some of these other Marvel games and kind of see, I think you said it best, it's hard to understand how much things have evolved in the industry in terms of game design until you really start playing, especially some of these older titles.
I never even finished my Lexus example.
Oh, go for it.
3 turns.
Hurry, because we're rolling into Champions time here.
Essentially, it's like if you have been driving an older car and you're used to it.
Like a 1996 Plymouth Neon like I did?
Or a Dodge Neon like I did. It had been wrecked by someone else. Okay. Anyways, if you've been driving an older car, you get used to it. I drive an older Toyota Camry right now. It's like, that's fine. But then we go on like a trip, we rent a car. And it's like, oh, you can start the car without putting the keys in it. You can unlock the doors without getting your keys out. And it's like, oh, I went to, my blinker turned left on the highway, and like it warned me there was a car that was there. It's like, well, that's nice.
Whoa.
It's not like an automatic driving car, which would be like openly mind-boggling. And it's like, this is just infinitely better. But Champions feels like there's like a million small quality of life improvements that were made. And so it's easy if you just get a new car every year to not really notice those things.
That's very true.
But if you go back and you drive a 2002 Toyota Camry, and then you're like, wait a second, I've been driving the 2019 model.
It's a lot different.
It sticks out way more. So if you own these games, you haven't played them in a while, I recommend going back and playing them, and then play a game of Champions and see how you feel. I think you will completely agree.
All right, well, let's dive into Champions. Catch us back on the live stream here in just a minute. We'll close this stream down, start the new one, and we'll see you there. Can't wait, guys.